You're in a design review and somebody references a pattern that you've never heard of before. I don't know, let's say skeleton loaders. So you nod along, try not to look dumb, and then you look it up after the meeting. Oh, that's interesting, that makes sense, and then you move on. Then you open Instagram that night. Boom, skeleton loaders. Next morning, you're doom scrolling on LinkedIn, somebody's posting about skeleton loaders. You're reviewing a competitor's app on Thursday, skeleton loaders. Suddenly, skeleton loaders are everywhere. Every app that you've been using for years apparently just started using skeleton loaders. But they weren't always there, were they? Actually, yes. Yes, they were. You just couldn't see them before somebody gave you the name and called your attention to it. And that's the frequency illusion. Your brain doesn't show you everything around you. It shows you what it's been told to look for. And the moment something new enters the picture, your brain quietly updates its filters and it starts finding it, seemingly everywhere. And it feels like a brand new discovery to you, but the world didn't change. Your attention did. And if that only ever affected how you notice UI patterns, it would be a fun party trick. But this mechanism is running in the background every time your team decides what's a trend, what's a problem, and what's worth putting on the roadmap. So if this sounds familiar, stick around because today we're talking about why your brain's filter is a lot less neutral than it feels. What's up, UX fam? Welcome to another edition of the Cognition Catalog, where every week or so, we'll dig into a new cognitive bias and explore how that bias can impact how our team works together and what we can do to ensure we don't get caught up in the pitfalls. Because working with people is hard, and the more insights we have into the human condition make it just a little bit easier. To learn more about the frequency illusion, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com and click the little bell down there so you get notified when a new episode drops so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. Shout out to this week's sponsor, Mobbin. If your team is tired of reinventing the wheel every time a new project kicks off, well, Mobbin gives you access to over 600,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows, all searchable with AI, and it's the kind of tool that makes the whole team faster. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and see why more design teams are making it a company-wide staple in 2026. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then for the love of God, tell your mom and them. So I was doom scrolling LinkedIn late one night when I probably should have been long asleep when I stumbled across a post calling out a typeface that somebody wanted to see retire. You know the one I'm talking about. It's Enter. It's clean, it's neutral, it works pretty much everywhere, which is exactly why it's on everything. The post was something like, Enter's everywhere, here are 5 better alternatives. Classic designer clickbait, and of course, I clicked. I laughed, I bookmarked the article, I closed my phone, and I finally went to sleep. And the next morning, I was browsing Mobbin, shout out to this week's sponsor, for some UI inspiration, and what do you know? Enter was everywhere. I jumped into Vercel to check something our engineering team was working on. That Vercel dashboard, all Enter. Open Figma Make to play around with a little idea I was working on, defaulted to Enter. And by the end of the week, I couldn't look at a UI without seeing Enter. But the wild part is that it makes total sense. Every AI design tool just defaults to it. Every Tailwind UI ships with it. Enter isn't everywhere because designers keep choosing it. It's everywhere because it's the answer that every tool reaches for when nobody specifies anything else. And nothing had changed. It wasn't new. It was always there. I just finally got the memo. And if you haven't noticed Enter everywhere, you probably will now. I'm very sorry about that. So what's the frequency illusion? Well, we tend to notice things more often after we first become aware of them. And then we assume those things are more common than they actually are. And this is the frequency illusion, the experience of learning something new and then suddenly seeing it everywhere. The information was always there. We just weren't tuned into it yet. So the frequency illusion has 2 names, and the story behind the more colorful one's actually pretty funny. In 1994, a man named Terry Mullen wrote a letter to the St. Paul Pioneer Press describing how after hearing about the Baader-Meinhof gang for the first time, they were a German terrorist group from the 1970s, he encountered reference to it 2 more times within 24 hours. And the newspaper published a letter, the name stuck. And for years, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon spread across the internet as informal shorthand for this type of experience. It wasn't until 2005 that Stanford linguistics professor Arnold Zwicky gave it the more descriptive label that we tend to use today, the frequency illusion. Zwicky was writing about language patterns, but the observation applied to almost everything. The Oxford English Dictionary later recognized the term, defining the frequency illusion as a quirk of perception whereby a phenomenon to which one is newly alert suddenly seems ubiquitous. Now read that definition a second time. Newly alert, not newly present. So why does this happen? Well, Zwicky attributed the illusion to two psychological processes working together: selective attention and confirmation bias. The first one lights the fire while the second one keeps it burning. Selective attention is the brain's triage system. It can't process everything, so it decides what matters and then it flags it for closer monitoring. Now, once something earns that flag, your brain keeps scanning for it without you consciously deciding to. The new UI pattern that you just learned about is now on your brain's radar, so every app that you open starts registering it. And then confirmation bias kicks in. Once you've started noticing a specific stimulus, you start to notice it more. And that noticing feels like confirmation when it's everywhere, even though the actual frequency hasn't changed. Now, one more thing worth knowing here is that the frequency illusion often travels alongside what Zwicky called the recency illusion. Now, the recency illusion is the belief that something you've only recently noticed must also be recent. It's a close cousin that compounds the problem. Not only do we think a thing is everywhere, we also assume it's just started showing up. Now, when we put these two effects together, it can make a brand new idea feel like an emerging trend. A single customer complaint might start to feel like a widespread pattern. A recently discussed feature feels like the most pressing item on the roadmap. And the frequency illusion isn't a failure of intelligence, it's more of a quirk of attention. Our brains are wired to prioritize novelty and look for patterns. And that's mostly useful until a new piece of information hijacks our filter and it warps our sense of how common, how important, or how urgent something actually is. The frequency illusion sounds harmless enough when it's about enter or a UI pattern that you just discovered, but the same mechanism runs quietly in the background of how product teams read their environment. And that can distort judgment in ways that's hard to spot because they feel exactly like insight. The most direct place that it might show up is in a design critique. A designer learns a new term, let's say affordance or progressive disclosure, and suddenly they're seeing violations of it all over the place. It's in their own product. It's in their competitors' apps that they've been auditing for months. It's in designs that they reviewed and approved months ago. The designs didn't change. We just got a new word for something that was always there. The same thing happens after a conference. Somebody comes back with a specific pattern or principle that they encountered for the first time, and suddenly it's visible all over the place. It's in products that they use, it's in the team's own design system, it's in research findings that they've been sitting on for weeks. Again, the pattern was always present, it just didn't have a name until now. Now, the tricky part is that it can feel exactly like professional growth. Learning to see things that you couldn't see before is genuinely valuable. Just be careful not to mistake newly named for newly present and treat a pattern that you just learned to recognize as more widespread or more urgent or more significant than the evidence actually supports. Building a habit of asking, was this always here or did we just get the right filter, creates enough friction between noticing and concluding to keep the team honest. So, what do we actually do about it? Well, here are a few places that we can start. First, understand that attention is not neutral. Your brain doesn't show you the world as it is. It shows you the world that it thinks it needs to look for. Once something new enters your awareness, your brain actively works to surface more of it. Every new thing that you learn is also changing what you see next. So building that awareness into how you consume research or feedback or competitive data is the first step toward filtering your own filter. Next, watch for shared attention bias on teams. When an entire team gets primed on the same idea at the same time, the frequency illusion starts to scale. Everybody starts noticing those same signals in the same direction with the same confidence. And what feels like team alignment might actually be team-wide tunnel vision. So rotating who introduces topics or who synthesizes research and who challenges assumptions can help the team's collective attention from collapsing into a single focus. Next, don't let airtime substitute for evidence. The amount of time that a topic has been discussed in meetings is not a measure of its importance. Before treating a recurring theme as validated, trace it back. Where did it come from? How many independent sources actually raised it? Has it been tested against data, or has it mostly been referenced in conversation? Frequency in the room is not frequency in the real world. Next, create deliberate distance between discovery and decision. The frequency illusion is strongest right after something new is introduced. That's when novelty is still fresh and the brain is actively scanning for confirmation. So don't think of waiting before acting on a new pattern as indecision. Think of it more as discipline. Building in a review step between we notice something and we're prioritizing this gives the initial spike of selective attention time to settle before it shapes the roadmap. And then lastly, surface what you're not seeing. Think of last week's episode on survivorship bias. Most prioritization conversations focus on what's showing up. The frequency illusion should prompt an equal focus on what's being filtered out. So regularly ask, what problems haven't come up lately? What users haven't we heard from? What signals aren't making it into our conversations? The absence of attention isn't the same as absence of a problem. It might just mean that nobody primed the filter. Remember that every new thing that you're learning is also changing what you see next. And there's no version of staying curious that doesn't come with it. The goal isn't to stop noticing. The goal is to notice what you're noticing and then leave a little bit of room between that and calling it a pattern. Well, all right, y'all, that's it for the Cognition Catalog for today. I hope it helped to shed a little bit of light on the frequency illusion and how we can avoid some of those pitfalls at work. But I'm curious, has the frequency illusion impacted you or your team before? How'd you get through it? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. To learn more about the frequency illusion, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com. Sign up for the newsletter to get a new bias in your inbox every week, and make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. And if you think you're getting something out of the show, then I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And if you want to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some select biases, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/shop. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the promo code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. To learn more about the frequency illusion, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com and click the little bell on there so you get notified when a new episode drops so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. And if you want to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some select biases, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/shop. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the promo code YouTube to get 10% off your entire order. And if you have a favorite bias that you want to see in print, let me know. I'd be happy to take requests. And if your team is tired of reinventing the wheel every time a new project kicks off, Mobbin gives you access to over 600,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows, all searchable with AI. And it's the kind of tool that makes the whole team faster, not just you. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and see why more design teams are making it a company-wide staple in 2026. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, Zoe, and many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. You get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.